All right, so this will be the last part of the conic section, actual, new information. We're probably going to take a look at some more new stuff for this, but for the actual, new graphs, this will be the last part of it. So this is the writing equations of parabolas, which to do this, let's just review back over the vertical parabola standard form equation. It is x minus, if I can write, x minus h squared equal to 4p times y minus k. And just remember that with a vertical parabola, x is going to lead. And then a horizontal one, we just take x minus k and x minus h, or y minus k and x minus h, and flip them. So now we'll have y first squared, y minus k squared, equal to 4p times x minus h. So those are the two equations that we'll need. And then just remember that the way they give it to us is the absolute value of P is the distance from the vertex to the focus and the directrix. But basically just remember that P is the distance from the vertex, and then in the opposite direction from the vertex to the directrix, that is also, I guess, P, or you go in the opposite direction to find the directrix. So we'll be looking at given a graph, and then we'll be looking at given a vertex and a focus, which they also give you some stuff where you're just given the directrix, but I'm just not going to worry about all that stuff. We're going to worry about just the vertex and the focus. So at first we'll be given a graph, then we'll remove the graphs and just get the points. So when we look at a graph, we're going to need to, in order to make this equation, we're really going to need two things. We're going to need our vertex, and then we'll need to know what P is equal to. As long as we know those two things, we'll be pretty good to go. So our vertex is just going to be the point where our actual parabola goes through. So this point here is our vertex. So that would be at 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's going to be at 0, 5. And it's also just good to note that this parabola opens up, which means it's a vertical parabola, because a vertical parabola is the only one that can open up, or it may open down. So since it opens up, we can already establish this is going to be a vertical parabola. So x should come first when we write our equation. Now, the distance between our focus and our vertex is p. So if we know the distance between this point and this point, that's really all we need, because that's what it gives us. That point is inside of our curve, so that's the focus. So if we count from that vertex to the focus, that's 2 units. We would go, let's see if I can zoom into it. We would go 1, 2. So that means that P is equal to 2. Now, that gives us pretty much everything we need, because now all we have to do is plug in P and our vertex into our equation. The only part that we really have to do any extra stuff is right here, but I'll just show you an easy way to do that. We're just going to plug in P how it is. So what this would look like is X is going to come first. So X is not going to be in parentheses, because H here, or my X coordinate for my center, is 0. So I'm just going to have X squared first equal to, because we just essentially plugged in 0 for H, and then this will be equal to 4P. So instead of writing P, we'll write 2. So it'll be 4 times 2. And then all of that will be multiplied by Y. And it would actually be minus 5, because the vertex Y coordinate is 5. So we just flip the sign and make it minus 5, which is just how it's written here in our standard form. So now the only thing we have to do is take 4 times 2, which that's going to give us our answer. So we'll have X squared is equal to 4 times 2 is 8 times Y minus 5. Now that's our equation for our parabola. So that is the first part, or I guess that's the first problem. We'll look at the second problem now. So our second problem, we're given the same thing. We're given the vertex, and we're also given, since our curve is opening up on the left, we're also given our focus, because that focus is within that curve or in the same direction that it opens up. So we could already establish that this opens up to the left, so our parabola is horizontal, because only a horizontal can open up left or right. So this is a horizontal parabola, which means y should come first when we make our equation. But we still need two things. We need our vertex and we need p. So if our vertex is this ordered pair, which is going actually a point on the curve that we're given, the parabola, that point is our vertex. So we're going to go over 1, 2, 3, down 1, 2. So our vertex is 3, negative 2. And then to figure out what P is, we're just going to count from that vertex to our focus. So that would count, or we would count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now notice we went to the left. So if we were looking at the x-axis, anytime we go left, that's negative. So this P is actually going to be minus 5. All right. Now we've got our vertex, we've got P. We can just plug all of that into our horizontal parabola equation. So we're going to have y first. And for that y, we just need to know the x coordinate or the y coordinate from our vertex, which it was negative 2. So we're going to make this a plus 2 in parentheses squared equal to, we're going to plug in P into 4P, or we're going to plug in negative 5 into 4P, which when we plug that in, it would be 4 times 5. So I'm going to have negative 20 here. And all I did there was just act like I was plugging in negative 5 for this point here for P. So you could do that to the side and then just write it. I'm going to do that because I'm running out of room. So then we'll have x next, which to make the equation for x, we just need to know what the x coordinate from our vertex is. It's a plus 3, so we're going to make it minus 3 in our equation. So this would be the equation for our parabola. All right, now we've got two more, which I do want to do these. So when we're given a graph, we're going to look at the directrix. But when we're not given a graph, we're not going to. So this part should be a little bit easier because we can actually see the graph. So notice here, like on 3 and 4, we're given the vertex because that's the point where our parabola actually goes through. But we're not given the focus. So we're not given the same thing we were given in 1 and 2. But we are given this dotted line, which I wish my computer would quit going crazy. This dotted line is the directrix, which on that point there, if you can see it, that point there would be the actual point for that directrix. So here's what we can do. We're going to be able to count from that center to that directrix, and that'll actually tell us what the focus is too, because we just have to change the sign, but we'll get to that. So first, my point of saying all that was, don't get freaked out when you're not given the focus. We just have to do a little bit of extra work. So we still need two things here. We need the vertex and we need what P is equal to. So first of all, the vertex is given to us already, and it is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, negative 6, 1. And we also can see that this parabola opens up to the left, so this must be a horizontal parabola, because only horizontal parabolas can open up left and right. So when we make our equation, y is going to come first. Now we need to know P. So we're not given the focus, so we can't just count over to it, but we can count over to the directive or the directrix and then just change the sign. So if we were counting from the vertex to this directrix point, it would be going minus 2 units because we're moving to the left. So that means that P is going to be positive 1. So the focus would actually be like right here. So now we have everything we need. We're just going to plug everything in. So now y is going to lead because this is a horizontal parabola. So we'll have y minus 1 squared because it's a plus 1 in our vertex, equal to 4p, which if p is 1, then 4 is just going to stay as it is. And then that's going to, actually, I didn't mess up. Okay, I thought I messed up. So now we've got to do x. So x is going to be in parentheses with the x coordinate for my vertex, which is a minus 6. So it's going to become a plus 6 in parentheses. And then that's my equation. And then we'll look at number 4. So number 4, we're given the same thing. We're given this directrix and not the focus. So we'll have to use the directrix to find the focus, or pretty much find what P is. So the first thing we can establish is that our parabola opens downwards. So this has got to be a vertical one because only a vertical parabola can open up or down. Next, we're given the vertex. So we can take that ordered pair and we'll have our vertex, which is one of the things we need. So we need our vertex and we need P. So our vertex is given to us. That's going to be at minus 1, 2, 3, 4, and then minus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's going to be minus 4, minus 5. And then we can count up from our vertex until we hit this point here. And that point is going to be the actual point for our directrix. So if we want to know P, we'll just have to count up to that point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that point is going up. And whenever we go up on the y-axis, that would be like saying plus 10. But we want to know the focus. So the directrix is always in the opposite direction of the focus. So the focus would actually be minus 10. So that means that P is minus 10. So really you just have to find that distance. And then if you were adding or going in the positive direction, you would have to then, as long as you're looking at the directrix point, you would just have to pretty much change the sign here and decide that I went up. So that was like saying plus 10. So for the focus, I would have to go minus 10. So that means that the P is going to be minus 10. So we're going to take all of that and plug it into our equation. What you could go ahead and do is decide what 4P would be. So if 10 is negative, if P is negative 10, then 4P would be negative 40. That way you can just plug that into your equation. So our equation is, we've got a vertical hyperbola, or not a hyperbola, a parabola, vertical parabola. So we're going to be having x lead. So we'll have x plus 4 because negative 4 is the x coordinate for our vertex. That's going to be equal to negative 40 because that is what 4p is. And then we'll have y plus 5 because we had a minus 5 for the y coordinate of our vertex. So that is your equation. So yeah, when it gives you a directrix, that part you just have to count to that directrix. If you count up, then for P, you would just have to change the sign to a minus. Like here, we counted up 10, so then we had to change it to minus 10. And if you were counting like down for the directrix, you would say, okay, that means the focus is plus whatever number you counted down. So it's really just like taking a opposite approach to it. All right, so those are when you're given a graph. Now, when we're not given a graph, it's not too bad here, I'll be honest. They're not too bad for us because if we have a vertex and a focus, we can just figure out the distance between those essentially, and that'll tell us what P is. But first thing I would do is you're given two ordered pairs here. So I would decide between my vertex and my focus, is my x coordinate changing from ordered pair to ordered pair, is my y coordinate changing? And here you can see that the y coordinates are changing. So that immediately tells you what type of parabola you have here. Because if we're moving on the y-axis, that means we've got a vertical parabola. So our parabola is vertical, which means when we write this equation, we should have, vertical means x for a parabola. And then the distance from 0 to 4 here is going to be what p is. So to go from 0 to 4, that would be 4 units. So p is equal to 4. You could also say, 4 minus 0 if you wanted to. So then that is going to lead us to finding out pretty much everything we need, because now we have our vertex and our and what p is. If I were you, I would just take this extra step to say, okay, if p is 4, then 4p is equal to 16. That way you can just plug it into your equation. All right, so now we can write our equation. So we have a vertical parabola, and we know our vertex, so we're going to start off with x for the vertical, and x will actually be by itself because the vertex's x coordinate is 0. So we'll just have x squared is equal to, it would be 4p, which is 16, times y, which y here would actually still just be by itself because the y coordinate for the vertex is 0. So this would be the equation for our parabola. All right, then we can do the same thing for number 6. So number 6, we're going to look at the vertex ordered pair and the focus ordered pair. We're going to decide, is the x or y coordinate changing? And here you can see the x coordinate is changing. So that means that if we're moving along the x-axis, we're moving horizontally, so we're going to have a horizontal parabola. So that tells us that y should lead this when we make our equation. Now, the distance from going from 0 to 5.2, that's what p is. So we'd be going positive here. We'd be moving right, essentially. So p would equal 5 over 2, or you could change that to a decimal if you wanted to. That would be what, 3.5? No, it'd be 2.5, I think. I can't remember. Yeah, it's 2.5. All right, so then if I were you, I would go ahead and establish what 4p is. So if p is 2.5, then 4p is going to be equal to, I think it's 10. Yeah, because 4 times 2.5 would just be 10. All right, so now we can make our equation. So we should have, since this is horizontal, we should have y first. Y is going to be by itself because the x coordinate for the vertex was 0, so we'll just have y squared equal to 4p is 10. And then that's going to be multiplied by x, but x is going to be by itself too because the x coordinate for the vertex was 0. So y squared is equal to 10x would be your equation for number 6. And then I'll do, I may do 7 and 8. All right, so now we just don't have we don't have zeros to work with, so it just changes a few of the things that we've got going on here. So now our vertex is actually going to have, or make us have some parentheses for our equation. All right, so establish when I'm going from vertex to focus, so these two ordered pairs, are my x coordinates changing or my y coordinates changing? If you notice here, my y coordinates are changing. Now, to go from 1 to 3.5, you're actually going down, or you're subtracting by what, 1/4? Or you could say, which that would be a negative, or you could say or negative 0.25. So hopefully that makes sense. When you're going from this point to this point, you would be going down, so that gives you negative. All right. And we establish we're moving on the y-axis, so that means that we are dealing with a vertical parabola. And now we can just figure out what 4p is, and we can just plug everything else in. So 4p would equal -1, I think. Yeah. If p is equal to negative 1/4 or negative 0.25, then 4p is going to equal negative 1. So now we can make our equation. So this is a vertical parabola, so x should come first. So we'll have x minus 1. Actually, no, I did that wrong. So that's a mistake that people will make, is they'll pick out the wrong coordinate. I just made it there. So x would be plus 7 because we have a minus 7 for the x-coordinate of our vertex, and all of that squared. That'll be equal to 4p, which is negative 1, so we can just leave it as a negative or a minus sign. And then we'll have the y subtracted by 1 because this is a positive 1 in the vertex y-coordinate, so that would be our equation. And then we'll look at 8. All right, so number 8. We're going to do the same thing here. We're going to decide between 2, negative 6 and negative 3, negative 6. What is the x-coordinate changing on the y-coordinate? And here you can see that the x-coordinate is changing, so we know this is going to be a horizontal parabola. And if I want to go from 2 to negative 3, I would actually have to be saying 2 minus 5 would give me negative 3. So that means that p here would be negative 5. So if p is negative 5, that means that 4p is going to be negative 20. And then I can just plug everything in. So if this is a horizontal parabola, I will have y come first. So I'll have y plus 6 squared because this is a minus 6 in my vertex x-coordinate. So it's going to be a plus 6 when I plug it in. And then 4p is negative 20. And then that's going to be multiplied by, let's see, x minus 2 because I have a plus 2 in my vertex for the x-coordinate. So that would be your equation for number 8. And we're not going to deal with actually working without a graph for the Directrix. We could do those, but I don't know. I'm just not going to fool with them. We're not going to have to do it. So this is it for writing equations for